Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thanks for tuning in and watching. Today, I'm going to dump on the government and the member of parliaments and the ones that are landlords and, yeah, to see where they're at. I've compiled my own data, but I'm going to start using this data from last year. These people at the Maple here, they compiled all the landlord or all the government MP disclosures to find out who is a landlord and kind of what those numbers look like. So here's their site. The link is in the description. And I just find out if your MP is a landlord. No, I think this is an important piece of information because these are the people that govern us and put together the rules for lending and housing and whatnot and housing policy. So it's very important to see where their kind of allegiances lie and if they're acting in our best interest. But of course, they're made to do these disclosures for a reason, so that we know this information as the public. So let's look at who's who and who's a landlord and who's not. So here's our list of all the landlords. I'm just going to put all three of these up on the screen. They wouldn't fit in all in one big long list, but here they are. And there's a lot of debate. I put this on Twitter, and people say, "Oh, there's more conservatives, and there's more liberals, there's more red, there's more blue." But I don't think it really matters. It's pretty evenly split. But let's look at the numbers here. First of all, here they are with the ridings and by province. Kind of the breakdown doesn't really tell you much, but here's the numbers here. So by political party, we have, of course, the Greens. I think it's just Elizabeth May and her son or something. They're like the co-leaders of the party. They're both landlords or declared landlords in their disclosure. The Conservative Party have 53 MPs that are landlords, or 46% of the conservative MPs are landlords. The Liberal Party have more by numbers, but less by percent. 61 of the MPs are landlords or involved in real estate, and 39% of their total caucus. The Bloc Québécois, only 19%. Six of those MPs are landlords. The NDP, four, which actually changed after this. Their leader got added on after this. But anyway, when this was done in middle of 2023, I believe, in June. Four of the MPs were landlords from the NDP, and two of the three independents were landlords. So, of course, I wanted to do my own research and a little bit more in depth into it and kind of pick it apart more. So I went to the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, where these disclosures are made, and I pulled the data by myself and kind of grabbed the data that I wanted to get. My numbers are very similar to that of the Maples. And of course, involved in real estate landlords and real estate holdings. Now, the actual landlords were 106 or 102 out of the 336 that had these disclosures. There was a couple of MPs that hadn't done the initial disclosures yet. That's why there's only 336 in the numbers here. But anyway, 128 are either landlords or have real estate holdings by my calculations, and that's 38.1% of all MPs. And the other 208 they don't have disclosures in there identifying that, but they are into all sorts of other stocks and bonds and whatever else. They have to disclose those things. Actually, before I move on, talking about the stocks and the bonds and the assets that they have disclosed, I just took a few notes here for some common themes that came up. I don't know what it means, but I saw a lot of Disney shares in these MPs disclosures. I kept seeing, Disney shares coming up. I saw a lot of trust fund babies in there. There was, probably 20 to 30 of the MPs are trust fund babies. So very privileged people, some of them. And Vanguard, a lot of Vanguard shares in there too. Saw that quite a few times in different disclosures. So I thought that was pretty interesting data just when I was looking through it. There's a lot of information in there that's interesting. So if you have time, go check them out. Go to your local MP or go to the site and check out your local MP and see what they're involved with. Now, one piece of data that I pulled that the Maple didn't was the number of MPs with two or more mortgages. And you can see here, 32% of MPs have two or more mortgages. I did see one MP that had five and his spouse had one. So they had six mortgages total in their family. Now, one note on this, this doesn't mean these people are landlords. So some of these, or a lot of these actually are not landlords. They don't declare rent income or tenancies. They're actually, maybe it's a second property, a vacation property, a cottage, or something like that. But the number of MPs with multiple properties, whether they're landlords or not, is about 50% in my estimation. So just when they're making policies and trying to, I'm not saying they influencing mortgage rates, but well, they are making policies and stress tests and things like that. Just taking into consideration these people are property owners and multiple property owners, more than 50% by my estimations. So this video is sponsored by the World Economic Forum. Just kidding. This video is sponsored by you, the viewers and subscribers, and the people who like these videos. Thank you for tuning in and watching. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be making these videos. So yeah, it's sponsored by you, and they will remain sponsored by you. Now, I felt it only fair to go to the party leaders, the 5 party leaders, and one extra actually, to see how they fare. I didn't want to pick on individual MPs, but let's go across all the party lines for their leaders to see if they are landlords and what their status is. So starting with our fearless, whatever leader, Justin Trudeau. So you can see in his latest disclosure, he has accounts receivable from some numbered corporation or Canadian corporation. He's a trust fund baby, blind trust administers at arm's length. And then when we move down to his investment in private corporations, significant interest in this Quebec corporation, a company based in Montreal, Quebec, which produces and sells firewood and lumber and real estate development. So, of course, Justin Trudeau is not going to own individual rental properties. He's involved in these big trusts, and he obviously real estate development of some kind. So, yeah, he's very invested in the real estate market. So hopefully it doesn't sway his decisions when he's making policies or voting on policies. Next is the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives. He is a sole owner of a rental property located in Park Drive in Ottawa, Ontario, and his spouse is the sole owner of a rental property located on Lake Ridge Drive in Ottawa, Ontario. And of course, other sources of income, rental income from the spouse, rental income. They do have a mortgage with Scotiabank and a mortgage with Tangerine on the spouse's account. Jagmeet Singh, the socialist leader. Now, I believe he is a newer landlord, but his wife is a sole owner of a rental property located in Burnaby, British Columbia. Of course, other income from the spouse is going to be rental income. And they have mortgage with RBC, and he guaranteed the spouse's mortgage with RBC. So he is involved in that rental. It's not just in his spouse's name. He guaranteed that mortgage. Did he use his MP salary to guarantee the mortgage? I don't know. I'm guessing he did. But anyway, something we'll talk about in a second. Elizabeth May's disclosure from her spouse, sole owner of a residence that is partially rented and located in Vancouver, British Columbia, and rental income as the spouse's other sources of income. She was also the guarantor of the spouse's mortgage with Coast Capital Savings and Credit Union. So again, somebody using most likely their MP salary, I'm guessing, not verifying this, but mortgage with Coast Capital Savings, mortgage with Interior Savings Credit Union, and a line of credit in there. Now on to the leader of the Bloc Québécois. He has no rental disclosures in here, and no multiple mortgage disclosures either. So it looks like not involved in real estate, not eating up that real estate supply there in Quebec, Yves Blanchette, or whatever his name is. Now, lastly, I wanted to pick on this last politician because she is the deputy prime minister, co-leader of the Liberal Party and governing second most powerful person in Canada politically. So, of course, let's see her disclosures. And I found this very interesting. Joint ownership with another person of residential property located in whatever street in Kiev, Ukraine. So, interesting. Joint ownership with spouse of 2 rental properties located on Aquinas Street in London, UK. Joint ownership with 2 persons on a farmhouse and a parcel of farmland in Peace River, Alberta. And the spouse declares sole ownership of a rental property located on Irving Place in New York, USA. Other sources of income for her, rental income. Other sources of income for her spouse, rental income. Liabilities, 3 mortgages with Nationwide Building Society joint with spouse. Mortgage with HSBC. Spouse's liabilities, mortgage with HSBC. activities, member of the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum, Davos, Switzerland. So it looks like this MP has quite the portfolio of international properties here, disclosures about being on the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum. She was the only one out of all the MPs that had a disclosure from the WEF, by the way. No other MP, even though they're recognized by them, but no other MP in Canada is part of the board or involved like she is. So she's a higher level of involvement in the WEF. So the reason I went through all of these leaders, now I didn't pick on any of the other guys, but is there a conflict of interest or is there a moral issue here? Depending on when you bought the properties. If you've owned these properties for decades, maybe not. But if you purchase these properties during a housing crisis using your salary paid to you by the Canadian people, then there's an issue, such as the last housing minister, not the new one. The new one doesn't own any rentals or has no disclosures of rentals. But the last housing minister didn't really do anything for the housing market in Canada, but was buying rental properties, therefore taking away supply in a supply issue that we had, taking away supply, and with his MP salary, not doing anything for the housing market. So I would consider that a moral problem. And of course, he's not the Minister of Housing anymore. So it's not just me that thinks this. He didn't do his job and he's gobbling up real estate. So I think that it could be a moral issue depending on the circumstance. I'm not saying all these people have committed moral crimes, but there is a self-serving interest in everybody, whether they're an MP or not. But this is just a sample of a group of people that I have access to. I'd like to do this with real estate agents, but I'd have to call an interview and take their word for whatever they say because they're not required to do disclosures. I'd like to do this with many people, but the amount of work and the disclosure requirements would be quite the task. Anyway, let me know what you think. Is it okay for these MPs to own multiple rental properties and have multiple mortgages while they're influencing and creating rules for mortgages and housing policy in Canada? Or is there not a moral issue or an ethical issue? I tend to think there is, but I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments because I got a lot of feedback on this, and I think that it's a relevant debate to have. So now talking about housing supply and housing crisis issues and supply and demand, and we need to build more houses and all the rest of this. I've touched on this before, and I've used different time frames. This time, I want to show you some data, population and housing completions, but I want to go back to the last housing crisis that we really had in Canada, which was the late 80s, early 90s. So going back, I grabbed the data in the increase in population and the housing completions. And just to let you know where I got the data here from Statista, this was going back to 1990 when the population was 27.5 million. And of course, the housing completion data I got from the Government of Canada, from StatsCan, which came from CMHC. And I went back, I got all the completions. They only had completions up until the end of 2022. 2023 isn't out yet. So this is why I'm going from 1990 to 2022. And here is the data showing that our population in that time frame has increased just under 12 million people. Our housing completions have been just under 6 million. And our required completions based on that population increase of just under 12 million at 2.5 people per household, which is the number of people per household as reported most recently back in 1990. Someone just posted on X, what was it then? Of course, it would have been higher then. So our surplus is going to be actually higher than I'm reporting here. But we only required 4.784 million homes to house the increased population in Canada, but we built almost 6 million. So we have a surplus of 1.2 million homes, or approximately 1.2 million homes in that time frame. Now, of course, anyone that is going to argue that we have a housing supply issue now, yes. In the last couple of years, they're bringing in 1 million people and they're only building 200,000 homes or completing 200,000 homes. Of course, we have a supply issue. But if you look at the big picture, and again, this is a 32-year time frame, we don't have a supply issue. We have a demand issue because people are turning those homes into Airbnbs and rentals and vacation properties, whatever the case may be. Now, this data also doesn't include any basement part apartments or rental apartments or duplex things that have not been registered, but definitely not basement apartments. They're not considered housing starts, and all these other in-law setups that we have, which you could probably add another 500,000 to a million units to the supply over the last 32 years. So again, we have a demand issue, not a supply issue. I keep saying this. And of course, you have this sample of the population that happens to be MPs that, almost 50% would own multiple properties. So what if everybody's going to own multiple properties? And some of these, there was many that have three, four, five properties, and I didn't break those down. So if everyone was to buy multiple properties, we're obviously going to have a demand issue. But to house the population, we have more than enough homes to house the population. So next, to kind of back up my theory here, I want to show you the number of listings for sale in the areas I have access to and the number of listings for lease. So starting with the number of listings for sale, and this data on these charts, it only goes back 10 years for these quick charts that I can pull, or else I would have went back further, but I have to pull that data manually. I only have so much time. But regardless, you can see whether it's on the Toronto Real Estate Board or on the ITSO, the other one here, you can see the number of listings for sale in the ITSO one, the one that doesn't say TREB, has actually decreased from 10 years ago, decreased from last year. It's not at highs. We don't have more listings. We built more houses, but we have less listings. In the Toronto Real Estate Board, it is up from 10 years ago, but it's down from the last 2 years. And it's not up by much. Again, there has been a lot of building and condo development in the GTA in these years, but we really don't have that much more listings. So where has all this inventory gone? Like, we built homes, but we don't have any more listings for sale. People aren't selling them. Is that why they can't sell their house because they can't afford to buy a new one? I don't think so. This is where they've gone. Looking at the two same areas that I just showed you with these for sale listings, I'll leave them all up on the screen here. You can see the number of lease listings showing up on TREB has increased dramatically. It's over twofold in the last 10 years. Every year it's almost increased. 2020, 21, 22 was flat, but 2023 is up, meaning there has been a lot more leases coming on the market. And if you look at the other chart here, this is from the ITSO, the 20 board surrounding the GTA, we have gone up 4 times since 2014, and just since 2021, our number of listings for lease has doubled. So where has our inventory gone? Well, it's turned from listings for sale into listings for lease. Clearly here, this is one of the most populated areas, or these combined are the most populated areas in Canada. And again, we have no new listings for sale over the last decade, but we have double and quadruple, depending on the area, listings for lease. So all of our listings clearly have been bought up and turned into rentals by investors. Some of them are speculators that couldn't assign the property or sell it, so they have no other choice but to rent it out. But it's very clear that our inventory, and I say this all the time, our inventory was bought up by speculators and investors, and they had the opportunity to do it because of the wealth effect with money printing and asset price inflation. Their asset prices inflated. They took the money out and bought more assets with it. And this is what happens when the government policies and the Bank of Canada policies aren't working for Canadians, or the world in this case. So you're left with a situation like this where whether it's cars, houses, food, everything's inflated, and the wealth effect only applies to those that had existing assets, and the people that were buying up or were and still are buying up these investments are the people that were already invested in the market. So brings me back to my MP rant where I'm calling these people out. I believe it is a moral responsibility that the MPs, act in Canadians' best interests, and of course that's their job. But when they are involved so heavily in real estate, will that sway their perception or sway their policy making? Because do they really want their properties to go down, especially if they bought them in the last few years and they could be underwater? They're going to vote for what kind of serves them best at the same time. Just as you have certain leaders that team up with other leaders so they can stay in power, are they doing what's best for Canadians, or are they staying in power till they get their pension plan? It's the facts are there, whether they're doing it for one reason or another. There's still the option is still on the table, and it just doesn't look good. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.